And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. A horse-drawn carriage festooned with flowers led a cortege of mourners as family and friends paid last respects to murdered Patrick Tate. Relatives dabbed at eyes to hide their grief as they left St Gabriel Church in Pitsea following a moving ceremony. The tranquil winter service was a far cry from the brutal killing of Patrick Tate, 37, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe by a gunman in a quiet Rettendon lane on December the 6th. Friends and family had earlier gathered at Tate's Gordon Road house in Basildon on Friday, later following the carriage carrying the coffin to the church. Police directed traffic as a bell tolled for the 25-minute service in which a brother gave a touching tribute. 4 Daimler limousines carrying loved ones followed 2 hearses stacked with flowers. One floral tribute simply said, "Daddy." A card attached read, "Thanks for the good times, I'll never forget you, your baby son." A large tribute made out of individual lettered floral wreaths read, "Brother." It said, quote, "You'll always be in our thoughts and never forgotten in all our lives." As the coffin was carried into the church by 6 pallbearers, one heart-shaped red and white tribute rested on top. Around 60 mourners sang All Things Bright and Beautiful and recited the 23rd Psalm before leaving for another service at Pitsea Cemetery. TV viewers are helping detectives put together the last minutes of 3 drug barons executed in a country lane at Rettendon. But police admitted there was no big breakthrough in the search for the lone cold-blooded killer. Actors and murder squad officers reconstructed the macabre shootings on the LWT programme Crime Monthly. Within hours of the show, police received between 20 to 30 calls from viewers, mostly anonymous. A police spokeswoman said, quote, "Although there is information for us to follow up, there is nothing of any major consequence to report. Police are still hoping the reconstruction will encourage vital witnesses to come forward." Never to be forgotten. A cortege of 20 cars followed a horse-drawn carriage containing Craig Rolfe's coffin, which travelled from his mother's house in Beambridge, Pitsea, to St Gabriel's Church, Rectory Road. More than 70 mourners attended a service conducted by Reverend Laurie Blaney, at which he said a few words prepared by Rolfe's partner Donna Jaggers and his mother Lorraine. Rolfe, 26, of Calshot Avenue, Chafford 100, was shot twice in the head in a Range Rover parked in a remote track at Rettendon near Wickford on December the 6th. Pals Patrick Tate, 37, of Gordon Road, Basildon, and Anthony Tucker, 38, of High Road, Fobbing, were also murdered at the scene. The killer is still on the run. After the funeral, the procession of cars, including 3 black hearses, drove the short distance to Pitsea Cemetery. Wreaths were laid at the burial, including one from Miss Jaggers and their 6-year-old daughter, which said, "You are not gone until you are forgotten, and we will never forget you." The following newspaper article is from 1995, with the headline, "Behind the peace and love of rave culture is big money and big crime." As the icy dawn of Thursday broke over the flatlands of southwest Essex, Peter Theobald of White House Farm went out to feed his pheasants. He and his friend bricklayer Kenneth Jiggins had often joked about the route they drove towards the open fields. A rutted, snow-covered track where they had previously noticed not only the debris of lovers' assignations, but empty blown safes abandoned by robbers. 300 yards from the road, their way was blocked by a stationary Range Rover. Mr. Jiggins got out to investigate. As he moved to tap on the driver's window, he stared in horror. The 2 men slumped in the front seats had no faces. Behind them, a 3rd man lay with his abdomen ripped asunder. The car interior was thickly caked in congealed, freezing blood. Mr. Jiggins had stumbled on the aftermath of one of Britain's worst gangland killings, the product of deadly, long-running conflicts centred on the trade in youth culture's most popular drug, ecstasy. The 2 men in the front, Craig Rolfe, 26, who bought the Range Rover just a fortnight ago, and Tony Tucker, 38, sometime bodyguard to boxer Nigel Benn, could be identified only by their fingerprints. Police believe the killer first shot the man in the back seat, Patrick Tate, 37, and that Rolfe and Tucker then turned to face him. The assassin was a professional who used the advantage of surprise to blast 3 men to death with a pump-action shotgun in the space of 1 or 2 seconds. He would have believed he had no time to waste. It was only rarely, police sources say, that any of the 3 victims, who were all violent criminals, ventured out unarmed. There were no weapons found on the bodies. This, the police believe, is the biggest clue to the murderer's identity. For Tate, Rolfe and Tucker to have agreed to travel to such a remote spot without being tooled up suggests they knew and trusted their assailant, who was almost certainly a close criminal associate. The likelihood is that he travelled with them to the fatal rendezvous. Yesterday, as the murder squad, led by Detective Superintendent Ivan Dibley, continued piecing together the history of the victims' connections and possible vendettas, it was clear that the killings fell into a pattern. Sandwiched between Harwich, one of the principal entry ports for ecstasy, cannabis and amphetamines imported from the Netherlands, and organised crime's traditional stamping ground in East London, Essex has become a national black spot for violent criminality. Tate, Rolfe and Tucker were all members of a widespread villains' exodus from the East End. All had served long prison sentences for armed robberies, burglaries, organised car theft and serious assaults. At the time of their deaths, all were wanted target criminals, being kept under surveillance by the elite detective unit responsible for the fight against organised crime, the South East Regional Crime Squad. The police have a series of videos taken in and around the Highwayman public house in Basildon, which the gang used as a base for dealing in ecstasy and a range of other drugs. Some of the tapes depict Tate and Rolfe administering savage beatings to customers and minor league dealers who had somehow displeased them. In others, they are shown slashing victims in the face with knives. Yet despite this evidence, the police had not been able to prosecute. Not one of the victims was prepared to make a formal statement to detectives, let alone agree to give evidence in court. Tate himself had been on the receiving end of earlier vicious attacks, and he too had refused to talk to the police. Not, however, through fear, but as a result of the unbreakable underworld taboo against becoming a grass. Last year, he was shot in the arm on his Basildon doorstep. The incident led to his own appearance in court, charged with possessing an illegal firearm found beneath his hospital bed. He was released from jail only 5 weeks before his death. In his case, it was already grimly apparent. Another few months in prison had done nothing to rehabilitate him. On the night before his murder, he ordered a home delivery pizza with different toppings on each quarter. Told this was not on the menu, he drove to the restaurant, hurled the till against the wall, then brutally assaulted the manager Roger Ryle, punching him and smashing his head against a glass plate stacked in the sink. Mr. Ryle suffered severe cuts and concussion, but he too declined to press charges after police warned him that Tate, an 18-stone bodybuilder, might easily decide to return to do more damage. On an earlier occasion, when he was wanted for robberies, Tate hurled an off-duty police officer through a plate glass window after he was seen in a supermarket. 2 years ago, he attacked 3 officers escorting him to court and overpowered them. He escaped on a waiting motorcycle which had been provided by his associates and ended up in Spain. Then he made the mistake of visiting Gibraltar, where he was arrested and extradited. Another case linked to the murders is that of Darren Kerr, alias Matthew Evans, a known business associate of the 3 dead men. Last August, he was abducted from the streets of Purfleet and had acid thrown in his face. As he recovered in Billericay Hospital, a gunman dressed as a clown shot him in the chest. The gun had been concealed in a bunch of flowers. Kerr recovered from the attack and he too refused to make any kind of statement to the police. But the murder squad is working on the theory that the clown with the gun and the White House Farm killer may be the same man. In moving from robbery and other forms of theft to the lucrative trade in drugs, Tate, Rolfe and Tucker conform to a wider pattern. Tate is known to have formed a close relationship with the leading Basildon crime family, for whom he is thought to have been working during his time in Spain. Detective Inspector Barry Cooper of the National Criminal Intelligence (NCIS) Drugs Unit said, "The people involved with the sale and to some extent the UK manufacture and importation of ecstasy and amphetamines are traditional criminals who have entered the trade for money, with established criminal connections. Some of them are East Londoners in their 50s and 60s who have been around a long time. They were street thugs in the 50s, armed robbers in the 60s and 70s, then maybe importers of cannabis. In my 28 years of police service, they are people I have known about for a long time. They have a wide variety of convictions, including serious violence. You are dealing with an economic commodity, and if you invest money, sometimes you have to protect your investment. This, Mr. Cooper went on, is the inescapable reality behind the peace and love message espoused by teenage rave culture, which since the late 1980s has sponsored the spread of ecstasy to the point where it is everywhere. The following newspaper article is from the 7th of February 1996 with the headline, "My son and his ecstasy mates were massacred in revenge for poison jab murder." 3 ecstasy barons were executed to avenge the horrific murder of a rival drug gang member, it was claimed yesterday. 2 of the shop villains, Craig Rolfe and Tony Tucker, are thought to have killed cannabis dealer Kevin Whitaker, 27, by injecting a lethal cocktail of drugs into his groin. In return, Whitaker's pals wiped them out on a snowy farm track along with their henchman Pat Tate, it is believed. The bodies of the 3 sparked a murder riddle when they were found in Rolfe's Range Rover outside Rettendon, Essex in December. But yesterday an explanation was provided by Pat Tate's mother Marie, 58. She revealed that before her son was slaughtered, he told her how Rolfe and Tucker ambushed Whitaker and killed him with a poison jab. First, they paralysed him by forcing him to snort a substance called ketamine. It is used to numb horses before castration, but it is known in the underworld as Special K. Then, as helpless Whitaker's muscles froze, the laughing gangsters pierced his groin with a syringe and pumped the deadly concoction into his blood. After he died, they dumped his body in a ditch near Basildon. Marie told how Whitaker, the father of a baby boy, was working for a rival gang in Romford. She said Rolfe snatched a bag containing £60,000 of cannabis from him before he was killed. And she added, quote, "I am firmly convinced the rival gang decided to get even with Rolfe and Tucker over Kevin's death and the theft of the cannabis." She insisted her son had nothing to do with Whitaker's murder, and he was killed on the farm track only because he tried to protect Tucker, a drug trade Mr. Big, whose dealers included one who sold an ecstasy tablet to tragic teenager Leah Betts. Although an open verdict was recorded at Whitaker's inquest, the results of a Sun investigation back Marie's story, and police believe her account of the initial murder is probably close to the mark. Marie said Tate blurted out the truth about Whitaker's grisly end when she visited him in a Basildon hospital hours after the killing attempt on November 17th, 1994. Tate, 37, was recovering after being shot in a failed assassination attempt. And unknown to his mother, he had hidden a gun in his bed to protect himself. He was also high on drugs smuggled into the hospital, which Marie said, quote, obviously loosened his tongue. Bodybuilder Tate told how Rolfe, 26, and 38-year-old Tucker, one-time minder of boxing champ Nigel Benn, gloated over Whitaker's death during a visit to his bedside. Marie said, quote, they told him with relish what they had done. Rolfe laughed because he thought he had got away with murder. Then Tate, who served time for armed robbery, went on to describe Whitaker's fate in chilling detail. Marie said, Kevin was forced to snort a substance nicknamed Special K. He was numbed from head to toe, but his brain and his mouth were still functioning. He was bundled into a cream-coloured BMW, unable to defend himself. They pulled down his trousers and all he could do was look at them pitifully, plead with them not to hurt him, and ask what they were going to do to him. They laughed in his face and injected him in the groin with a deadly mixture of drugs. Then they drove him to a parking spot down a country lane and dumped his body in a ditch. The mother added, quote, I was horrified at the time and too frightened to talk, but now my son is dead and I want everyone to know what evil people are out there. Rolfe, Tate and Tucker are thought to have been lured to their deaths by the promise of a drugs deal. Police believe their killer, who finished them off with rapid fire from a pump-action shotgun, travelled with them in the back of the Range Rover. Marie said, quote, Pat, Tucker and Rolfe were all big men pumped up with steroids. My son never went anywhere without his mobile phone in his hand and a gun in his inside pocket. It took a brave and very clever man to ride in that car with them and kill them before they had a chance to make a move. He is very capable of killing again. The assassin has not been caught. Police remain unconvinced the hit was motivated by revenge and believe it was an inside job carried out by a double-crossing member of the victim's own gang. But a Sun probe has uncovered startling links between Whittaker and Rolfe, and we learned that huge amounts of dangerous drugs were found in Whittaker's body. Our probe revealed he acted as a go-between in cannabis deals, and an itemised phone bill shows he called Rolfe's mobile from his father's home 4 times in the hours before he died. A message asking him to contact Rolfe was also logged on his radio pager, and his friends told how he made no secret of the fact he was heading for a rendezvous with Rolfe on the night he died. Whittaker's family are convinced he was killed by Rolfe and Tucker, but was written off by police as a junkie who overdosed. Detectives could find no evidence to support the murder claims, and at an inquest, coroner Dr. Malcolm Weir called the death most inexplicable. But the Sun discovered that high concentrations of cocaine, ecstasy, cannabis and ketamine were found in Whittaker's blood. There was also a devastating dose of lignocaine, an anaesthetic drug used as a cutting agent for cocaine. 8 micrograms of lignocaine in a milliliter of blood can kill. The level in Whittaker was 3 times that. Rolfe was called as a witness at the inquest and asked to explain his contacts with Whittaker. But a senior police source told the Sun, quote, "He suffered a convenient bout of amnesia. He denied meeting Kevin and said he only spoke to him on the phone to inquire about his baby son." Whittaker's father Bert, a retired Ford car worker, said, "The statement by Mrs. Tate confirms all my suspicions." He told how his son was debt-ridden and frightened, and he added, quote, "Kevin did not abuse drugs and was not suicidal." Alison Picton, mother of Whittaker's 1-year-old son Lewis, called the dead man a devoted dad. Alison, 23, added, "He would never have killed himself." If you would like to learn more about the Range Rover murders, then click on the video in front of you now. You will also see the Essex Boys playlist, which has all of the videos concerning this case in one convenient folder. Many thanks for joining me for this video. I look forward to seeing you all again for the next one. Take care. Cheers.